Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now today I want to follow up on another video that I did a few weeks ago. In fact, a collection of videos that I did a few weeks ago because something really interesting came out the other day, and it kind of adds to why I was talking about some of the stuff I was talking about. So we had a lot of discussion a couple of weeks ago around sex, around sexual confidence, around kind of getting to know yourself, being happy in your relationship, all that kind of stuff. And as some of that, I commented on, if you're into something, then you should discuss it with your partner. It could be something very mundane, could be something very kinky. And I mentioned certain kinks throughout as a bit of an example, just for the sake of giving you something to consider, I guess. And we had a few people, not many, more people that know me more rather than anything else, turning around to me and going, "Why didn't you just list something simple, Seb? Why did you have to go for the kinky stuff?" And well, part of the reason was because it's easier to go, as I've said in other videos when we've been talking about kind of political extremes and stuff like that, it's easier to go and hold up that big example when it is very outside of the norm. When you're talking about, oh, let's go and talk outside of the norm, let's go and talk about these specifics, having that example that I can hold up separately is something that, people are going to engage with maybe a bit more. But also, I feel somewhat validated in my decision to do that, considering the last few days, in fact, I think it was last week, we had a kind of study come out in regards to some various bits and pieces on what is considered normal for sex in the United States. And granted, the United States isn't everywhere, but it's a big population. It's fairly indicative of a lot of trends. And so as a result, where we're talking about things that are normal or average or typical or whatever, we now have this substantial amount of information that got rounded up all of like a couple of weeks ago, and or at most a couple of weeks ago, I guess. And so as a result, I've got this list here that I'm just going to go down and kind of pick things out from. It's interesting because this was a set of studies and various other bits and pieces done by all kinds of places, including UCLA in the States. And so, as a result, we've got all kinds of very interesting statistics and figures and other bits and pieces to take a look at. And so when we take a look at some of these things, we've got the first thing that's jotted down here is that in a UCLA study, the researchers asked for parents to keep diaries noting anything sexual in their lives, or in the lives rather, of their various sons and daughters from birth through to the age of 18. And parents witness only a very small amount of that, and the parents saw 3/4 of their children coming across things and all the rest of it. But where usually there would be the assumption of, if you're walked in on by your parents, it's a traumatic experience, all that kind of thing, the researchers found zero correlation. So when it comes to interaction, all those kind of things, having a healthy discussion with your parents and things like that, having a healthy appreciation for sex in a family environment, not with each other, obviously, don't go there, that's just wrong. But in terms of just a very realistic and straightforward and open environment to discuss sex and things, had no correlation with any kind of distress, psychological or otherwise, within those children. In which case, when it comes to, we don't talk about sex because it would affect the children or anything like that. Firstly, that's a ridiculous argument anyway, and secondly, go ahead and do it because there is some level of evidence to suggest that there's no correlation between harm being done to the kids. But then on top of that, moving away from that and more into the specifics of kind of what people do as adults when they are engaging in sex and stuff like that. It's particularly interesting to note that apparently more than half of American women own at least one vibrator, in which case masturbation is alive and well, apparently, which is only ever a good thing, I would imagine, getting especially in women, because their parts are hidden from them for the majority of the time. So getting to know yourself better, know what you like, all that kind of thing, good idea. But then also something that should be no surprise to anybody, but now for the most part, 95% of Americans are not virgins when they get married. Again, shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but there you go. The average age for losing your virginity, as it were, in the States is now around the age of 18, as opposed to what it was for their grandparents, which was actually 15. So, if anything, the younger you are, the more conservative you are likely to be in regards to when you start having sex, according to these figures. But then, on top of that, at some point in the lives of the men in America, between 15 and 20% of men will apparently become a patron of a sex worker of some description. There isn't really much else stated on that one, unfortunately, because it would be interesting to see what is meant by sex worker in that environment, or in that situation, but there you go. Again, rather unsurprisingly, going with other statistical norms, we've got the 11% of Americans that don't suggest that in any way that they are heterosexual, which again, that seems to be between like 10 and 13 to 15% seems to be the norm worldwide for kind of gay and bisexual and whatever else kind of populations. So that's maybe not a big surprise, but the numbers there suggesting that, that's, in America especially, that's about 30 million people. So that's a significant population in the grand scheme of things, compared to maybe other countries and things like that. And as a result, I would say 30 million people being found to be in that population is somewhat representative. So again, the 11% area is kind of not a surprise, but it's a good thing to have that reinforcement there. Then apparently by age 50, approximately 40% of people have experimented with various forms of anal play, and it says Americans generally, so I'm assuming that that's guys and girls. And then we've got other bits and pieces here in regards to about 20% of Americans have engaged in some form of consensual non-monogamy, threesome, swinging, group sex, polyamory, if that's the relationship structure that they've got, and so on. But then this is the figure that I kind of wanted to end on. And that is the apparently kinky sex is more popular than many believe. Indiana University researchers surveyed about 2,000 odd people. So again, not maybe the biggest of studies, but still a substantial amount within their area, from what I understand. And discovered that many enjoy elements of various forms of kink, including 30% listing things like spanking, 22% listing dominant submissive roleplay, 20% listings restraining, 13% of the whole group talking about whipping and flogging, and then there was a whole load of people, 43% in fact, that very much enjoyed playing around with each other in public. So there's a very wide percentage of people who go out and have arguably non-conventional sex, non-conventional relationships, and that there is a huge amount of diversity in regards to sexual taste and stuff like that. So when people asked me why did I go into the kinks when I was talking about stuff before, well, chances are that there are a good number of people that I was talking to in those videos who maybe need a little bit of a nudge along in regards to sexual confidence, or just needed a little bit of a guiding light or a path being laid out in front of them in regards to what to do with those things that they want to do. how to broach it with a partner, why they should broach it with a partner, all those kind of things, they're more prevalent than a lot of people think. In which case, yeah, that's what you should do. That's how you should approach it. You know, those videos were very much focused on go ahead and enjoy life, enjoy that sexual environment, that intimate environment with your partner or partners. And again, it's like, if you don't admit that these things are popular in various substantial ways, and that there aren't limits to when we start having sex, the kind of interactions and conversations we start having around sex, and all of those kind of things, then, you know, quite frankly, anything that you throw out there as a suggestion isn't going to necessarily be particularly useful or accurate or helpful to people. So saying, yeah, this is the situation and this is kind of where we need to go with it, and yeah, we need to include these things as examples because those are the kind of things that people want to talk about. If I kept it all very mundane and didn't really touch on anything at all, even glancingly, then, you know, there's a good chance that there are a lot of people who would go, right, well, he said about, I don't know, feeling each other up in certain ways, getting to know each other's bodies, all that kind of thing, but he didn't talk about whips and chains. You know, and so it's a case of going, well, firstly, just throwing out the more extreme examples is easy. It's funny to me, at any rate. But then also, it, you know, lets people that have been watching that video maybe know that little bit more, that stuff is out there and it's not going to hurt anybody just to talk about it. You know, just to broach the subject. If you're with a partner that's not into it, then they'll say, well, I'm not into it. And then maybe a middle ground can be found, maybe it can't. In which case it becomes a case of, you know, just working out how the two of you can be happy. And that's what's important. But again, realise all the weird, wonderful things that happen in the world of sex are actually surprisingly commonplace, but usually, you know, on average, there aren't more than two people in a bedroom enjoying these things at any one time. So we're not aware of it as much, that there are all of these other people that maybe like us or aren't like us, or that do something else instead. And so, you know, having those conversations is always very daunting. Acknowledging that actually you're probably not as weird as you think you are before starting to have that conversation, and following along with some of the things that we were talking about before, like actually getting to know yourself, actually sitting down and having a discussion, all that kind of stuff. You know, it's really important to understand that baseline, that, you know, oh yeah, you're weird in your own way and you're unique in your own way, and that's great, but you're probably not as weird or as unique as you think you are, to the extent that you can't interact with another person around that thing. But anyway, guys, I hope that tidies that up for some of the people that came to me and were like, why the kink? But it's you know, there it is, and I hopefully some of those little bits of information maybe just throw out a little bit more perspective. One of the things that I've maybe considered doing is just doing videos every now and again of like lists of random sex facts and lists of random kind of psychological facts or coaching things or whatever else anyway. If you'd be interested in those just for the fun of it, because they are interesting, then please go ahead, let me know. I'll maybe consider throwing one of those together in the next few weeks or something as well. But otherwise, guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this useful, and I will talk to you in the video later. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video or found it interesting, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the video later. Take care.